All right, next up on Tuned Into NoCo, we have the director of Northern Colorado Dyslexia Center, Joy Short, with us. So first off, Joy, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. To start, for our listeners who don't know, do you mind explaining what you guys do and what you're all about?
Sure. Yeah, we have been in existence for about 8 years now, and we have a center in Fort Collins and one in Windsor.
Wow.
We do mostly testing of students and also tutoring.
Really? That's awesome. Now, for people who aren't too familiar with dyslexia, do you mind just describing what it is?
Sure. Dyslexia is a learning disorder. It's a disability of language, and it affects 1 in 5 people, and it makes it hard to read and makes it hard to spell, and a whole slew of other things, but those are the main things that people find challenging when they have dyslexia.
Yeah, and I heard, well, I'm not sure if this is fact, so you can totally correct me if I'm wrong, but dyslexia is not associated with an impairment of intellect, vision, or a recognition of letters. Is that true?
That's correct. Yeah, it's a big myth out there that it's related to vision. Like you see letters backwards or you read words backwards. And it has nothing to do with vision. It's all related to the brain and how the brain is processing language in a different way.
That's so interesting. Now, do you know the percentage of the population in Colorado that's affected by dyslexia or the amount of people you work with?
Worldwide, the statistics are about 1 in 5 people have dyslexia. So it's very common. It's probably one of the most common conditions out there. It's more common than autism. It's more common than ADHD.
Really?
And in Northern Colorado, we don't have specific data on how many people in this area have it. We know that we get calls every day. So it's very it's a very common thing. So a lot of people struggle with it. We work with both kids and adults, and there's a lot of people who are challenged by this every day that want to get more help.
At what age do you start seeing signs of dyslexia?
That's a great question. So it kind of depends on the severity of the dyslexia. So if someone has very mild dyslexia, they may not see any signs until maybe high school or college when the workload gets a lot more challenging. And then it starts kind of popping out, and they call us to get more information about how to keep up with their high school and college classes. But typically, 3rd grade is the average age of the student that we work with. That's kind of your middle of the road, moderate dyslexia. And some common signs that you see around 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade is just their peers and classmates are starting to read more challenging material where they're still kind of stuck at the basic reading level. Spelling definitely is a key sign. Spelling challenges is a key sign of dyslexia. So spelling things phonetically instead of using the correct spelling. Some very early warning signs are some speech delays, even as early as 18 months old, 2 years old, if a child is not speaking like their peers. Also, if they are struggling to learn how to write their name. So those would be a few early warning signs.
That's super interesting. And your website, too, I was looking, has a lot of resources and information about dyslexia. I wanted to talk about a couple of them, starting with the Barton Reading and Spelling System. What is that?
That is a curriculum that we use. It's a language curriculum. That's the main program that we use for students with dyslexia, both kids and adults. And it just teaches the English language in a way similar to how you would learn a foreign language. So it's very structured, systematic. It goes in a very specific sequence. It uses all the components of language to help support a student in their literacy. So learning fluency, comprehension, vocabulary, grammar, of course, reading and spelling skills.
Yeah. How long is that program?
So most of our students attend twice a week, and those are 50-minute sessions, and it takes them anywhere from 2 to 4 years to complete that program.
Okay, awesome. Now, you also have a link on your website to Write Law. What should people know about that site?
This is a really good resource especially for parents who are wanting to learn more about the laws around dyslexia, or if they are needing a little bit more support to help them explain dyslexia to their child's school. It's kind of an advocacy website, so it just helps parents to understand how to discuss dyslexia with their child's school.
Awesome. That's really cool. I'm kind of going back to the programs you have. You guys offer tutoring, which is great. So how does that work, and what ages do you tutor?
We start tutoring students at 5 years old. And then we have worked with people all the way up to people in their 70s. Wow. So we see progress in all ages, but especially in kids 8 and under, we see the most dramatic progress, which is really exciting when when we get a student that is under age 8. But the tutoring is just, like I said, about 2 times a week. Okay. Some of our kids come 3 or 4 times a week to complete the program more quickly. Okay. But generally, what research supports is about 200 hours of instruction, which is usually 2 to 3 hours per week for 2 to 3 years.
Now, I know you already went into the curriculum you guys use, but is there anything in particular that you teach your students during these programs that you've seen really help a child or adult with dyslexia?
Yeah, so again, research supports using a program that's very structured, systematic. It's often known as the Orton-Gillingham methodology. Okay. And that was, there's research going back to even the 1890s. So we have a lot of good research that shows what works for someone with dyslexia, whether that is a child or an adult. And it's an Orton-Gillingham type of teaching is teaching the student using a lot of multisensory methods. So lots of tactile, kinesthetic, hands-on kind of ways that just helps the brain to understand language in a new way. So it's very heavy on the language. It's also heavy on the sound structure of our language. Okay. So dyslexia is a sound-based language disability. Okay. So again, it's not vision related. It's very auditory. So it's how the brain, it's not a problem with your ears or your hearing. It's how the brain is hearing sounds, how the brain is understanding sounds. And so it's not an overall language issue like a student will not struggle with expressing themselves. They will struggle with how they hear sounds. Okay. So any good tutoring for dyslexia is going to strengthen the brain's ability to hear sounds in a new way and how to put the sounds together. When we say sound out a word, when we tell a student to sound out a word, if they have dyslexia, they literally don't have the skills to know how to do that. So in tutoring, we are doing activities that strengthen the brain to understand sounds in a more efficient way.
Wow. Now, like you said, it's auditory. It's not vision related. Right. So when a kid is looking at a sentence, they see what they would hear.
Yeah. So when a student is first learning how to read, there's nothing in the brain that is, specifically like this is the reading center of the brain. Our brains are not wired to know how to read. So how we learn how to read is based on speech first and how we are saying sounds, how we're hearing sounds. So then as we get older, when we start learning our letters, then we associate, the P sound with this little squiggly letter that has a line and a circle, the letter P. And so when the brain is not understanding sounds very well, then that association, the sound with the letter, gets kind of mixed up. Okay. And so we call that mapping. And so it's not mapped correctly. So the sound and the letter get very, it's not an automatic process for that student. Okay. And so then that just kind of builds over time. And it becomes more challenging. Even just learning a letter is challenging. But then, of course, to make those letters into words, words, and like you said, the words into sentences, it's just not a very automatic process. It's very slow and burdensome for the student.
Well, what you guys are doing is great. It's very interesting too. Do you guys accept students on a rolling basis?
Oh, yeah. So we're always accepting new students. Usually we have a wait list, but we always are adding new amazing staff to our organization to accommodate for all the families that are always wanting to start tutoring and testing. There's no start or end times really. We are it's customized to each individual and what they need, and it's always one-on-one.
Okay, that's great. Now, you guys also test for dyslexia. So if someone is interested in a dyslexia assessment, what's the process? What should they know?
Yeah, dyslexia assessments are going to test how that individual is understanding sounds and language. And it's kind of a multi-step process. So the first step is just to do an intake call. We look at developmental history, health history, definitely family history. Family history of dyslexia, of reading and spelling difficulties is number one risk factor. So we like to start there. And then if we believe that, yes, this is looking like dyslexia, just from that intake call, then we start the process and we look at school records. We look at report cards, testing reports from the school. We look at writing samples. We do some spelling analysis of their writing, which is a really cool part of the process. And then, of course, we work with the individual themselves for a few hours doing all sorts of different screening tools. And then we look at the findings of that and then kind of add up the results and see what it's showing. And the most important part of the process is then sharing with whoever needs that information, the results of that testing and how to best support that child or adult moving forward. So we work with a lot of adults too. We've tested a lot of adults lately who want accommodations in the workplace. To be more supported and to do their job better. So again, it's fully customizable. We customize it to what each individual needs to be supported, whether that's in the classroom or in their workplace.
Yeah, that's great. Now, speaking of the classroom, do you guys work with public schools or private schools on how to teach kids with dyslexia?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big part of what we do is when we're working with a child, we also go into the classroom, mostly on the family's request, if the family wants us to go into the classroom. And we help their classroom teacher understand more about how to support the child. We answer any questions that they have about dyslexia. We also do workshops for schools to just help them understand more about dyslexia, how to fully support that student.
For somebody who's listening who is interested in the curriculum, an assessment, or just more information about what you guys do, where should they go?
The easiest way is just to give us a call, and we do free calls all the time on a daily basis to just answer any questions that you have, and then we can talk about different options, different kinds of plans moving forward. So our phone number is 970-460-6771, and that's the easiest way to get in touch with us.
Perfect. All right. Well, I only got one more question for you. Let's talk about you a little bit. What's your story? How did you get involved?
Yeah, my background is in traditional classroom teaching. So my degree is in early childhood education, which is birth through age 8. So I primarily started in the early childhood realm, teaching preschool and kindergarten. And over time, I taught for about 20 years. Over time, I started moving away from large group and worked more with small groups and one-on-one. And I did traditional tutoring. And I knew nothing about dyslexia. It's very common for classroom teachers to never have gotten any training in school about dyslexia. So while I was tutoring kids, I started learning more about it, just educating myself. And then later on, found out that my son has dyslexia.
Really?
So I understand it on a parent perspective too. So that helps with that empathy side of things. And my staff as well, most of my staff have a child with dyslexia or they themselves have dyslexia. So it was, it impacted my family as well. So it's not just my job, it's my whole world too.
Yeah, well, Joy, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. Before I let you go, is there anything else you'd like our listeners to know?
I don't think so. I think just the most important thing, and being a teacher, I'm always going to advocate for education and awareness. So just we have the luxury of so much, almost too much information online. So, if you, the first step is to just get online and start watching some videos, read a little bit about dyslexia, see if it's something that is impacting you or your family's life, and just get more educated and aware, and feel free to call us if we can be of any assistance.
Joy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was great. For our listeners, if you would like more information about Northern Colorado Dyslexia Center and the services they offer, you can give them a call at 970-460-6771. Again, that's 970-460-6771. Or you can check out their website at NoCoDyslexia.com.